All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. This is going to be mostly football, some basketball at the end, so stay for that. We have Mike Hardison and Julian Council. Julian, is this your second or third appearance?
I think like third at this point in time, because we talked after Mack retired but didn't retire. That's the last time I think I was on here.
Yeah. So people know Julian, Locked On Panthers podcast, and of course Mike, who does a lot of the post-game stuff. Breaking news, we're recording Monday night at November 18th at 7:33. Breaking news, Charlotte fires Biff Poggi. So he had less than 2 years there. And Tim Brewster of UNC assistant fame is their interim head coach. So some local news here in the college football world. Does that move the meter in Charlotte, Julian?
No, it's not going to at all. I don't really know what expectations are for Charlotte football other than to be, I guess, this bad. Like, they appeared out of nowhere over a decade ago. They announced a stadium renovation last week. Yeah. They fired Will Healy. They fired Brad. What's his last name? He's like with Wake now. He's Wake's DC. I don't think anyone cares other than, I guess, people who went to University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So, sorry, I'm trying to say Charlotte now, but I'm so used to saying UNCC, having grown up here. But I know they get upset if you call them anything other than Charlotte nowadays.
Yeah, they're 3-7 this year. Obviously, UNC beat them. They beat East Carolina, and then East Carolina fired Mike Houston. And now you have two openings.
Honestly almost took that job at one point in time because he was going to take the job, and ECU opened up, and that's how Will Healy ended up at Charlotte instead.
Interesting. And then so now you have two openings in the state of North Carolina, potentially more. Who knows what happens with NC State, with UNC. It leads to the topic du jour. All right, we'll start with Mike here since he hasn't talked yet. If Mack wins out, 8-4, let's just throw out the bowl game, 8-4, what happens? What do you think happens? I know what you want to happen may be different, but I asked people this question. I was in Chapel Hill. I asked everybody. We talked about it. Everybody I talked to talked about what happens if Mack wins out, which is very likely. Now they're sitting at 6-4 after beating Wake this weekend. What happens, Mike, if Mack Brown and the Tar Heels win out to go 8-4 for the 2024 season?
Yeah, just based upon like kind of what people in the know seem to be kind of hinting at, I think that if he wins out, there's a decent chance he's coming back. Which obviously, I mean, you know my feelings. Like, I think the way they handled the Tyler Kraft situation was phenomenal. I think it speaks a lot to the character of the program. They're able to kind of rebound after that losing streak and having such adversity off the field. But I still think my preference is that he moves on. I think that we've kind of seen what Mack Brown's going to do every season, the problems that we're going to have season after season, and it just feels like we're trying to repeat the same thing over and over again. But I do think that if he gets 8-4, especially the victory over State, that will be enough for Mack Brown to basically go back into the program, go back into Bubba's office and say, see, like, we're moving in the right direction, we rebounded, there's progress, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's like legitimate. I think we have a very soft schedule, right? Like, I think everyone knows at the beginning of the year we knew it was a soft schedule, but as the years progress, I think it's even softer, right? Like, we got FSU in their worst season in memory, right? We had a Wake team that has been struggling mightily all year. We beat them by a touchdown, right? I think we need to be very realistic about what these wins are in November. And while it's great that we've rebounded and the program's kind of rallied, and when they could have folded very easily, it's not high-level competition that the team's beating. So what I think will happen is I do think we will win out. I think if Mack loses the State game in particular, that's like he's got to be done, right? There's no question about that. The fan base isn't going to tolerate that. If he goes 8-4, you know, he might get himself another year, which I think is what he wants. So,
yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to happen. Obviously, we all want to see them win out, but it's difficult. Like, if he wins 8 games, he won 8 last year. He won 9 before that. UNC coaches don't get pushed out when they win 25 games in a 3-year period. Like, that rarely has happened in the history of this program. I think we all understand that this is an 8-win program at its foundation. Now, there have been the rare years where they've won 9, like a couple years ago when they won the ACC Coastal Division title with Drake May, went to the ACC title game. There's been the year where they won 11 games with Larry Fedora, but we rarely see those 10-win, 11-win seasons. I believe they only have 9 in the program's history. So I don't know. It's tough because I look at recruiting. Obviously, there's been some decommitments now from some of the people that are pretty in the know when it comes to Carolina recruiting, like Don Callahan over at Inside Carolina. Marshall Pritchett was never a guy who was fully locked in. He's going to Alabama. Can you blame the kid for wanting to go to Alabama instead of come to Carolina, especially with that offensive scheme that Kalen DeBoer has? You look at the other kid who's from Illinois. He has a torn ACL. They got two guys on the roster right now in Timmy Lawson, who also plays baseball. His torn ACL, can't even play this season. And then Julian Randolph, who is a second-year player. He tore his ACL last year. So did they want another tight end who was banged up and in Illinois has had a pretty good season this year under Brett Bielema? And then the other one, Anthony Crua, down in Georgia, he's going to UGA. And when I read a quote from the kid talking about how his high school program team was like they're going really bad this year, he just not want to be on another losing team. He was looking at what's going on in Chapel Hill, like right then and there. I was like, yeah, that's a guy who's gone. But according to guys like Don, had they known that being the Farrell kid, that's the kid from Illinois, had he and the guy down in Georgia known that this staff was going to be around for the next couple of years, they would have come to Carolina. But they're still that unknown, which makes it interesting how they're still courting Isaiah Campbell, who's from Durham, and he's one of the top 50 players in the country, a defensive lineman, which Carolina is going to really need to go out there and get a lot of guys on the defensive line. Not sure how they're going to be able to do that with their disinterest in paying guys via the portal. It's just hard, man, because I do think like recruiting has taken a step back. Now, getting Bryce Baker would be big, and this is a program, in my opinion, in the new NIL landscape that has to get a quarterback. I do not think they're going to be able to build a kind of roster that's going to have the kind of talent top to bottom that can be able to compete week in and week out for whatever the ACC is going to look like. They need to have a difference maker at that position like Sam Howell and like Drake May. And people may be upset that, oh, they wasted Sam, they wasted Drake because they weren't able to get a defense. Man, they won 9-8 games with those guys. Things that, like Mike said last year, pretty good around here. And he's not wrong. He's not going to be a long-term answer. They do need to figure out some sort of soft landing for him in the future. I'm just torn because I look at the House settlement. That's not figured out yet. I look at the fact that Florida is saying, nah, we're going to keep Billy Napier around because we don't really like the head coaching market out there. I think there's so many things with the new expanded playoff that still need to be figured out to where Carolina may not be in their best interest to move on from Mack. And it's going to be his decision. Let's not get it twisted. I don't know if it's the best time to do it right now. So it's hard because I think – for the betterment of the program, it's better sooner rather than later to get that coach in. But is there someone out there that really makes sense considering all that's kind of still getting figured out in college football? Like they may be smarter just to wait.
I would also say it's the 18th of November right now, right? Like, transfer portal opens up end of the regular season. And if there's not a succession plan in place right now or a plan after Mack's gone, it's not happening this season. I mean, let's just be realistic, right? They haven't identified their guy. If there haven't been back channel negotiations going on right now, which there's been nothing leaking, and like I feel like the program typically has some sieves in it, as we saw with the post game locker room situation.
Yeah.
If there's not information out there about who we are targeting or who we think would be a great coach, it's probably not going to happen. And be frank, if it's this late in the process and they haven't identified someone, it probably shouldn't happen.
Yeah, so a couple of things for the recruiting class, which, man, again, Julian's so locked in, like naming names, I do not even know the decommit, so it's incredible. 69th ranked class right now with 11 commitments. That's not great. That's way below average, but I think they're leaning on more transfer portal as a strategy now. But I think it shows that the decommitments, along with just lack of high-end talent, that players in that class feel the insecurity and the instability within the program. And I'm sure there's tons of negative recruiting against the staff, especially coming off the JMU game when your head coach quits in the locker room. And then another important topic, like Julian said, is I don't think it's Bubba's call. I think it's Mack's call, which is a very, very unique situation. I don't know if there's many programs across the country where the AD isn't making the decision on whether the head coach is fired. We're seeing firings at ECU and Charlotte, and of course some other ones will happen. But the AD is making that decision. But this one is controlled, which is odd. It's controlled by Mack and controlled by donors. And so it all comes down, it's like this war of who has the power, which is odd because you would think the AD has the power. But so it's kind of this odd power struggle that I think is taking place. And I agree, like I think it's just hard to fire someone and justify firing someone or asking to step down, or if he just wants to step down at 8-4. but I don't think the program can take the next step. I think we're delaying the inevitable. And that is we're just pushing it back. It's going to affect recruiting. I mean, 69th class is not great. It's going to affect what transfers you can get.
Yeah.
You got to hope that Bryce Baker stays on. I think that's critical. You do what it takes in NIL to get him coming on, but you're delaying the inevitable. And I hope Mack realizes that maybe this is not the year, but at some point you have to have a succession plan. And I think because we're having the same discussion next year.
Yeah, the Bryce Baker thing is interesting because when you look at it, quarterback recruiting happens so quickly. Like the guys that are juniors right now in high school have already committed to where they're going to go. And it happens like 2 summers before the traditional, like, because every other position, it's usually that summer going your senior year when you commit. But there's been some movement in the quarterback recruiting classes this year where like Julian Lewis, who, depending what service you look at, is one of the top quarterbacks. He was committed to USC. He now is decommitted. He's a kid who's from Georgia, and he was actually down in Athens this past weekend for the Tennessee game. Houston Longstreet, who's from California, he was committed to A&M. He decommitted. He's now committed to USC. So Texas A&M needs a quarterback. And Bryce Baker is one of those guys that they haven't looked at, but eventually they may just try and save face, come after him. And that's the thing I'm interested in, because I wasn't too concerned a couple of weeks ago just based off of how all these guys have spots. Like if Mack even leaves, like where is he going to go to where he's supposed to be the guy where he coming to Chapel Hill next year? Like whether Criswell comes back or not, if they bring in a new staff, he would have had a chance to compete, I would think. Yeah, it's just the recruiting part of it, because like Mack came in here to mend those high school relationships, which I think has happened. But now we were seeing that recruiting taper off because I don't think the relationships are severed. I think it's more so people just don't know who's going to be here. And if he gets Isaiah Campbell, that's just going to be so interesting. Like you get one of the top quarterbacks in this recruiting class and you get one of the top defensive linemen, and then yet you had all these guys decommit. It would be like mixed signals being put out there from just like how some recruits feel and like how the coaching staff is able to recruit and still get these guys onto campus. It's all difficult. And it sucks because like Carolina's playing good. Like they play great defensive football. People have been wanting sacks. They're like top 10 in the nation in sack totals after the UVA and Florida State games. And then they played well defensively against Wake Forest on Saturday night. And we'll see what happens against Boston College, but that's a game they're favored in right now. NC State, I don't still feel great about it, but they're starting to win games, and like 8-4 appears in sight. And yet we're having this same merry-go-round conversation about like what's the state of the program when things are like going good on a 3-game winning streak.
It's such fool's gold though, because these teams suck.
Everybody in the ACC sucks though.
I know. I mean,
Miami doesn't even have a top 25 win. Neither does SMU. Like neither does Clemson. Like there's not a single good team in this conference.
Yeah, but I agree, right? Like I don't think any ACC team's going to do anything in the college football playoff, but if we had Clemson, SMU,
Louisville,
who else? Like any of these teams on our schedule, it's a guaranteed loss.
But you're never gonna have a schedule like that in the ACC. Like even looking at next year, they only have Clemson, then they get Stanford. Like you're not going to have a tough schedule ever in this league, which I guess maybe points to go get a coach who's better organized, because then you just get that schedule luck. Like SMU, that's what it is. Like they're not good. It's just they, for whatever reason, like they got Florida State. That was it. They didn't get. I guess they got Louisville, who is overrated in my opinion, because that team, you saw how they lost to Stanford, but like this, you're not going to have a hard schedule in this league. Like this is not the SEC. Hell, it's not. The Big Ten, I think most of those teams still suck anyways. But you're just never going to have one of those like grinders where I don't know, man.
It's so frustrating, man. There's not a guarantee.
Let's reset this. So let's say UNC beats Boston College this weekend and then loses to State. Does that change what happens?
Maybe in the mind of the.
Do you think regardless Mack is back, given how they on 3-game win streak, 6-4, bowl eligible for 6 straight seasons, all this positivity? I think that's it's very. I think they'll be probably 3-point spread against State. 3-4.
I think
2.5.
The best case scenario is for this team to find a way to win these next 2 games, and for Mack Brown to believe the best thing for the program moving forward is for him to step down, but to stick around and coach the bowl.
Yeah.
Because then he can sit here and talk to these players as the new staff comes in and tell them, like, hey, take a deep breath, talk to the new coach. Because let's be honest, all these guys, anyone who's any good, they already have all these staffs reaching out to him across the country, being like, "Hey, Mack's going to step down after this year, so we got a spot for you." Like, these guys already know where they're going to go next year. The ones that, like, if Travis Shaw wants to go somewhere, he already has a spot. Like, who else? Amari Campbell, if he wants to go somewhere, these guys already have spots next year. Goss probably. So that would be, I think, important for Carolina if, like, Mack was able to stay around for the bowl while the transition's happening, and then have them have more of a clear mind and talk to the new coaching staff and give them more of a chance than if, like, he was, like, ousted today and it's like no one knows who the next coach is going to be.
I also think if they're going to make a move, this is a year, because what other jobs are coming open? I think next year you're going to have Florida potentially, hell, maybe like LSU, Virginia Tech. I think UNC is maybe a
Auburn,
equal job. Virginia Tech,
Auburn,
USC, Kentucky.
Kentucky
this
may come open now.
Yeah, Kentucky.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
And that's John Summerall, who, like, I want. He's going to UK. Or if Lane ever leaves Ole Miss, like, he has ties to Ole Miss. Like, that's a guy that – see, and that's the thing, though, Russ, like, it's a good point you bring up there. But, like, it kind of goes back to we still don't really know how the hiring cycle works with the 12-team playoff, to where that could be a benefit to waiting. Because while, all right, you're going to be the best available job, like, when are these guys going to be interested in taking this job?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I read the message boards. The Glenn Schumann thing is a pipe dream. But Georgia's going to the playoff after they beat Tennessee on Saturday night, unless they lose the Tech. And I still think they're going to the playoff because it's the SEC.
Why is that
Georgia.
pipe dream, though? He would leave
Carolina
Georgia, right?
They're not going to spend for that kind of guy to come in. I just don't see that happening. Like, I think they get a coach who you can feel good about, but I don't think they're going to necessarily get one of those, like, SEC coordinators. Like, I mean, Travis Williams from Arkansas would be another name that I would love to see here, but are they going to have the recruiting apparatus, and they're going to have the amount of polo shirts that you see down there in Gainesville when, like, Napier first got down there? Are they going to spend the kind of money on NIL? Because that's really a big thing, because the first thing coach is going to ask, what's the NIL like? It's like, okay, we got the whole Carolina NIL thing together now. Let's say, okay, but, like, do your donors want to spend money on NIL, or are they more interested in spending money to sit in the blue zone and not watch the game?
But wouldn't, like, the guy at Georgia, what's his name again? Yeah, why would he not leave for a head job if he's offered a head job? Like, wouldn't they be able to pay him more than he's making at Georgia? Like, UNC's a decent head job.
I guess they could, but
like,
is the salary pool going to be enough?
If the NIL pool isn't there and the assistant coach pool isn't there, you get one shot at this, right? Like, you get one shot as a coordinator, jump into a head coach position, and then if it doesn't go well, it's back to being a coordinator. So, like,
I think I think UNC is a better job than you're making it out to be, Julian. I mean, I think it's a desirable job.
I don't know. I think it is a desirable job. Obviously, absolutely. When you look at, like, the brand that North Carolina is, I mean, there is support, obviously, fan base wise. Like, this is a talent rich state that continues to grow. You are going to be able to, like, any decent coach who comes in here should recruit at a top 30 level at least. Now, I would have said top 25, top 20 before NIL, but now looking at the state of things, like, that's going to be difficult. And then we still don't know, again, with the House settlement. And if Carolina can afford to field a football program like that and fill in all those scholarships, and then also on top of that, give NIL money. We know that SEC and Big Ten schools can do that. Like, is Carolina going to spend $8 million on a coach per year like Indiana, who had never had a 10-win season until this year? Like, I'm not saying that Indiana's a better job than North Carolina. I'm not saying that. But those are important things. NIL, the kind of funding and backing that you can give to the salary pool, not just for the head coach, but for the assistants. Like, I think it can come in the ACC. Like, this is a job behind Florida State, Clemson, and Miami in the current structure of the ACC. That should be number 4. And you look at Mack's tenure here, recruiting-wise, they have been right there in that top 4, sometimes number 1, sometimes number 2 in recruiting. But recruiting landscape has changed. And that then has made this job and its attractiveness change a little bit. Still think it's attractive. Chapel's a great place to live. Good talent in the state. But those other intangible things, we'll see.
Yeah, they got to figure out NIL. And I talked to tons of people. Like, people like, us and some, like, friends who have more money, way more money than me, that live in Chapel Hill, and are like, do you donate to NIL? And they're like, no. Like, no one is, like, the average kind of, like, season ticket holder, fan, Blue Zone, Vest, Q-Zip. Like, they don't donate to NIL. Whereas at SEC, I feel like everyone is. I think UNC fans are so different. where they have other interests and they don't feel like their money shouldn't be going to players for them to buy cars and stuff. Like, I just don't think the mentality is there. So something's got to happen with NIL, I think. I don't know if it's a mentality change by the whole fan base. Because I think right now they're relying on a select few, like the top 20 donors, to support this whole thing. Who knows? I would love to have some of the NIL guys on to actually tell us what's happening, but I don't know if they would. But that's got to change, and I think it's a mentality over the course of many, many years.
Yeah.
All right, you want to talk Wake Forest a bit or anything else on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I do think Carolina's going to be an attractive job. If it comes out in the market this year, next year, like, there are people who are going to want this job. And I found it very interesting when Pete Thamel of ESPN came out on his podcast with Reese Davis, I think probably last month in October, and said that North Carolina would be a more attractive job than Florida. I think more so because Florida would have then gone from firing Will Muschamp and firing Jim McElwain and firing Billy Napier, and there's somebody in between there, right? Dan Mullen. I think they're hiring and firing coaches every 3 to 4 years. Yeah, you get rich off of that, but like Michael said, like, this may be your one opportunity. Do you really want to go out there and get fired again? Or you can go to North Carolina. You know, 8-4 is pretty good around here. And, I mean, you would stick around for a while because, like, Fedora, if it wasn't for Mack being available, he was going to get another opportunity. And that just tells you, like, what this now different landscape than what things are now. And it just kind of tells you kind of what they're willing to put up with. And I think Larry probably deserved another opportunity considering the success he had in the middle of that tenure, and that it was unfortunate that he loses Seth Luttrell and he loses Blake Anderson and, like, didn't have the play callers. Like, Kaprilovich wasn't up for the job and they didn't have a quarterback. That's really what sunk them. That team, like this team, they never quit. And they're winning 2-3 games those 2 years. They played hard, and this team has played their ass off too, which says a lot about the coaching staff. When you look at Louisville, I mean, how many times have they quit on coaches? That doesn't happen in Chapel Hill. So you got to give respect to what Mack's been able to do with that. So it'll be interesting. Like, I think they have a chance to win out. I think the best interest of the program is for Mack to probably move on, but also stay on through the bowl game and help with the peaceful transition to power, so to say. But there's challenges, obviously, when it comes to Carolina and NIL and trying to figure out the landscape. But I do think this program should be a top 25 program annually. And where does that put them in the ACC? I guess right there, kind of contention, really, at the 4th spot. So we'll see. I don't know. I really want it to be over with and have it, like, just figured out.
I think someone like Mack, there's something said about, all right, you went out here, you beat State in your last regular season game. You go into a bowl game, probably like the Military Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl, where you're going to have a team that you probably can beat. You go out at 9 wins, which is a pretty damn good record. I mean, we all know the background, right? But at the end of the day, 10 years from now, you're going to see 9-4 potentially on the box score. And you control the narrative. You went out on top. You decided to retire and shepherd the program, coach the bowl game while the new coach staff gets set up. And you can look back and you can tell everybody, they'll listen, this was a huge success. Mack 2.0, he came back, he showed everybody. And so, for someone like Mack, who's got quite a legacy, he's a Hall of Famer, I think there's something to be said about this is probably your best opportunity to kind of control the narrative on your way out. I think if he comes back next year, it's a different story, especially with recruiting and transfer portal and everything like that. I think right now you've got a clean shot at really, cementing your story here. So,
yeah, the best thing for the program would be to step down and ease it in and get into an admin role and head up the fundraising and work for the Rams Club or whatever, and become some, the head of football alumni connections and donors, and just make easy transition and stay on in a admin role. All right. Let's move quickly. We haven't really done a post-game show in a while. Wake Forest, I was there. Julian was in the Blue Zone. I was in GA with the Commoners. I will be in the Blue Zone for NC State. I got a ticket kind of through this podcast. Mr. BZ's dad hit me up with some tickets, so I'm excited for that.
Well, actually, I was not in the Blue Zone. I had Blue Zone access. I was still sitting in my seats at 120. Just had a nice little connection to be able to get a wristband and go in there before the game and during halftime. Yeah,
I was texting everybody trying to get in there. Anyway, it wasn't that cold. I broke out the new vest. I was decked out, and it was fun, man. That night game, I forgot how fun it is. I haven't been as a fan for a long time, and Carolina Inn was rocking, and I thought it was a good crowd. Do you think it was a good crowd, Julian? I mean, people on the board said it wasn't, but I thought it was a great crowd.
It was better than what I expected. I'll just say that. I don't think it was a great crowd because you look at the night games that we've had like under Mac, like the first one against Miami, that was like electric. Obviously, last year against Miami. I mean, the Virginia game a couple years ago, it was a better crowd than I expected. So I was actually happy to see it wasn't like completely empty until at the end where it was still like the game was like into balance. Still people were clearing out.
They were up 2 scores and then Wake scored and then they had that onside kick. I mean, the game was still in question in the fourth quarter and fans were definitely leaving. All right, 2 things stood out to me was 35 carries for Marion Hampton, just like running him into the ground. I pulled the stats right here on Stat Broadcast. 35 carries for 244 yards, and they got all they could out of him. And then I thought Travis Shaw, like, player of the game on defense. I know he wasn't named that by UNC, but he had the 2 big tackles for a loss. He had a fumble recovery. He celebrates everything. You're seeing this improvement from him. I thought that was the 2 things that stood out to me. Let's just go around the horn. Mike, what stood out to you from this game outside of what I've said already?
I thought the defense with winning the turnover battle decidedly was great to see. Power Eccles pick 6 and Marcus Allen interception. That was a sick interception he had. I think there's something to be said about when the defense needed to step up, they made a play. And in games past, that has not been the case. So I think that you have to credit them for real improvement in that regard, right? They made plays when it mattered. Omarion Hampton, like, hey man, like keep running. He's here for a reason. He's getting paid NIL money. Like, keep running. I don't think
that jumping touchdown was crazy because usually they get caught by that second guy, and he ran over. The guy caught him, and his momentum pushed him over. Because you see it in the NFL all the time, they jump the first guy, the second guy stops them because they're unbalanced. He just ran through that little linebacker into the end zone. Sorry,
I thought it was also a pretty poor game for Criswell. I thought he missed a lot of throws. I think he's had better games for sure. I'm not saying that he's been awful this season. He's been serviceable, but I thought this was one of his weakest games, and it gets covered up by Hampton in the defense, to be completely honest.
14 for 22 for 132 and a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree. He didn't play well at all. I also felt like they threw it too much. Like they dominated Wake up front, and even early in that game, I was just screaming, just run the ball, man. This is not a team that physically can match up to your offensive line and be able to tackle Omarion, which we saw in the performance that he had in this game. But yeah, Criswell was not great, and you barely saw any receivers get some action. And that makes me wonder, just kind of going into this offseason, whether he's back next year or not, kind of how the receivers thing work out with Mack if he comes back, when they get a new coaching staff and kind of that quarterback position, because he's not really getting to the ball. The tight ends are getting the ball, which is always good to see. But yeah, I mean, Omarion's amazing. I'm not worried about workload. The guy has 2 more games in a Carolina uniform, barring that he doesn't play in a bowl game, which I wouldn't expect. I don't know if he strikes me as the kind of guy who's not going to play in it or not, but I would expect that he's going to play 2 more games, and that's going to be it. So if you got to run 35 times, beat State and beat Boston College in those games, do it. I don't care. And hopefully his NFL future won't be hindered by getting all these carries the last 2 years, but they're going to have to do that to try and win football games. And that's Mack Brown's job and Chip Lindsey's job and everybody else in that staff's job. But Travis Shaw, that's really the story of the game to me. The way that he played, having the 2 TFLs, 4 tackles, 3 of them solo, he was outstanding. And they need that from him the next 2 games. BC is going to want to run it, and they are physical. They're better coached than this team. He's got to be a monster in the middle again. And in NC State, same kind of situation. He's going to have to be great. And if he can be, that helps out Power Eccles, that helps Maury Campbell, and of course that helps everybody else on the defensive front with the way he played. So they didn't get a lot of pressure. That slow mesh kind of made that the issue. But I still think that this is a defensive line that's really turned things around since that first bye week going into that game against Virginia and Charlottesville a couple weeks ago.
And what's important to notice with Travis Shaw is, he's in the middle taking up blocks. So, sometimes defensive linemen can have 0 tackles and still be a stud player. So just because he got 4 tackles and 2 TFLs is huge, but he was, assuming, taking up tons of blocks and making a lot of plays. All right, passing. What do you think was the longest pass play for UNC in terms of yardage for a wide receiver? Completion.
13.
Yeah, I was going to say 13. I'll say 15. I'll take the over.
Nate McCollum had a 22-yard catch.
That's right.
But that's it. I mean, gosh, under Sam and Drake, 60, 50, 80. It's 20. We had J.J. Jones had a 20-yarder, and Nate McCollum had a 22-yarder, and 18 for John Copenhaver. So those are the only explosive plays on the offense. All right, Boston College, noon kickoff, and then announced today, NC State, 3:30 kickoff. That's the remainder of the season, and we'll see if what happens from there. Julian, anything else? We get Julian out of here, and Mike and I are going to do 10 minutes on the heels ahead of the Hawaii games. Anything else, Julian? We appreciate your time.
No, that's it, man. Please win out. Would love for Mack to find a way to retire peacefully, win that bowl game, and get John Summerall here to Carolina, and hopefully just get back. I don't know what we're getting back to, but maybe get to what we always have dreamed of here in Chapel Hill.
I got one question. Who is the quarterback next year? I think I was asking people. Like I think you got to go
From
against
what
somebody,
I've
right?
seen, I mean, if Bryce Baker comes to Chapel Hill and stays no matter what, from what I've seen from Jacoby Criswell, there should be an open competition. And like if somehow they get Summerall to come here, Darian Mensah, I mean, he's a California kid, so he may stay. He might go transfer out there somewhere. I don't know. But if you can bring him,
that? Like who'd you say?
Darian Mensah is the starting quarterback at Tulane. And Tulane is kicking ass right now. Like, that is a hell of a team. And, like, Summerall is on his way to winning 3 straight conference titles, 2 of them in the Sun Belt with Troy. And now this year, I think in the AAC, like, Army, they're going to get railroaded by Notre Dame on Saturday night. And then Tulane's going to whoop their ass, too. So, I mean, that's in that situation. Like, Boise slips. Say Colorado State loses and UNLV makes it to the conference championship game. Like, they could beat Boise. And then we're looking at Tulane in the playoff, and that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. Like, when are you going to be able to hire these guys with the expanded playoff? But yeah, Darian Mensah maybe, but Bryce Baker's my hope because I don't think Criswell has shown nearly enough for me to feel confident. But it's been his only time actually being a starter. But I'm going to say Bryce Baker. Fingers crossed.
I wonder if they can like promise Bryce Baker the starting job. Like, hey, stay committed to come in and you'll compete and win the job. I mean, Max Johnson's gonna be on the roster still. Who's the guy? And the Connor Harrell. I could see him transferring. And the freshman,
Connor Harrell's going to UAB next year.
The freshman, what's his name from Florida? Michael Merdinger.
Yeah,
they liked him. All right, good stuff. Good talk there. I guess it's a lot of John Summerall Tulane talk. Julian, appreciate your time.
All right, see you guys.
All right, you're listening to Big Hitters Only. Monday, November 18th at 8:04. Hey, if you want to sponsor this podcast, we've had some interest. We're going to try to close some deals here to get some sponsors to support us. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We've got Spencer Dalton coming on for some reaction pods as the basketball season ramps up. All right, Mike, we haven't talked since they played American. I was at that game, complete beatdowns, like 106 to 60-something.
107-55, 52-point win.
Most points under Hubert Davis since he's been the head coach. And then they got Hawaii at 12:30 a.m. on Friday night or Saturday morning, however you want to phrase it. Yeah. And then that's they put it at Hawaii, and then they head to Maui. They have what is the first game?
Is it Dayton?
Dayton, yeah. Dayton at 11:30 p.m. Damn, that's late too on Monday. I didn't know that. And then they have a game Tuesday and Wednesday, depending on who wins and what UNC does. God, 11:30 p.m. That's a late one. All right, so what did you see against American? Anything kind of coming off the Kansas game? We'll do a quick 10 minutes here.
Yeah, I think the 3-point shooting in the first half was kind of concerning. They played around their foot a little bit, and then you saw the second half they just exploded. I think you have to take. I think my future father-in-law was asking if we should be concerned about RJ Davis at all. I'm of the opinion no. I think Hubert had a great quote where he's talking about, hey, he's adjusting to who the new team is, right? Like most of his boys have been there for 3 or 4 years. Guys are passing the ball differently. He's throwing to different players. It's going to take a little bit of adjustment. So, and he's figuring out his new role because we're playing with 3 guards now. So, not as worried about RJ Davis, although the shooting in his early couple games here has not been at the level that we've expected it. But you're seeing that offset by stellar play by Seth Trimble and Elliot Cadeau, right? Elliot Cadeau in particular has just been phenomenal. He's been, it looks like sophomore year Kendall Marshall out there. It's quite fun to watch. He's getting better shooting, and it really opens up for everyone. You saw Drake Powell make some incredible blocks there. I mean, God, what a freak athlete, man. Jalen Washington, career high in points. So the team showed some really good stuff in that game. I would like to see a better defensive effort, especially in the first half. And I think that's been kind of a recurring theme so far, a couple games into the season, is that, including Memphis exhibition, that type of thing, has been that first half they kind of mess around defensively. They're not really locked in. And then it takes until about the second half to kind of figure it out and sort out how they're going to move forward. But a lot of positives to take away from it. Hawaii Hasn't hit a lot of threes this season, so I think they've hit. I think earlier today in a chat I'm in, I was told 12 threes all season so far for him. So of course I'm expecting them to splash 10 in the first half against us late Friday night, early Saturday morning, just because that's how it seems to work. But hopefully they can put Hawaii away. Hopefully they can take care of business against Dayton. Dayton will be, is not a gimme by any stretch. And then we get into the real meat of the tournament. So should be a pretty interesting little stretch there next week.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the bracket now. I'll let it load. So if they beat Butler, this doesn't help me. Anyway, they could get UConn in the championship game. I just know that. Anyway, all right. So yeah, American. I thought K. Tyson, just seeing him make those threes was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the confidence building. I talked to him after the game, some boots on the ground reporting. Like, it didn't seem like his confidence was dwindling, but of course, he wasn't a factor in the first two games. It got pulled after 1 minute. That's got to kind of suck for your mentality and your confidence. And he kind of hesitated with shots and pump fake shots in the first half. And then kind of early in the second half, he hit his first shot, maybe midway through the second half, made his first shot and then hit two more from the exact same spot before missing his next three. I think he finished 3 for 7. That was good to see. That's huge. You want, well, like I think we said on that podcast, like, you need him to get a lot more time, and you need him to see the ball go through the hoop. He scored on a layup as well. Drake Powell is a freak. Those two blocks, when you rarely see someone block a shot and save the rebound, right? That's like a skill. That's like gives you extra possession. There's no value to a block shot if the other team gets the ball back. But he saved both those. I mean, I'm seeing him top 10 in the draft, so I just wonder if UNC can even steal an extra year from him.
I honestly think he should go, right? Like, we need a lot of.
I mean, he should go. You gotta wonder what I could see his if his family doesn't need the money, stay another year and becoming a top 5 pick. Who knows? But yeah, if you're a top round pick, first round pick, you should definitely go. His offense, though, I mean, it's not like he's gonna come to the NBA and be some amazing offensive star. He could value the time you get in college. Anyway, Elliot Cadeau, you're right. I think he's the leader of this team. He is stronger, and it's visible that he's stronger. He's scoring through contact. He's so quick getting to the basket. He is leading the team in assists, not surprising there with, let's see, pull it up here, 7.7 assists. He's second on the team in scoring, tied with Seth Trimble with 15.7 points per game. I mean, he's a heartbeat of the team right now. And Hubert Davis made a big point to talk about RJ Davis and how, like, he's not playing, shots aren't going through as much. He's not playing as well as he had in the past, but it's very early and it will come. And he's getting used to playing with a whole different roster. He can't lean on some of the guys he leaned off in the past. And so there's an adjustment factor there. And then Seth Trimble is incredible. And that threesome in the back, although it is short, I think Seth Trimble's athletic ability, and leaping ability, he plays a lot bigger than his listed 6'2", 6'3". So that's kind of my brain dump there. I think I touched on everybody I want to touch on. Ian Jackson did not play. James Brown did not play, lower leg injuries. But a source told me Ian Jackson would have at least played if it was a game of extreme consequence. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do reaction podcast-wise for I don't think I'd want to do one on
You don't want to
Friday.
3 a.m.?
Nah, and probably not on Monday either. Maybe we can do something on maybe after the Tuesday game might be better. So we'll see there. Anything else on basketball? I mean, I think for me, the K. Tyson shots was the biggest takeaway. Like, if I was writing a sidebar for Inside Carolina, I would have written on K. Tyson. I think that's so huge. He does just seem like he lacks the athleticism that maybe we expected. I think he's a tad slow in terms of foot speed. It's probably why he played, at Belmont. So that the defensive thing is concerning. But hey, if you can make some shots, you can be serviceable to this team. So that's what we need from him.
I would say we need to avoid the slow starts moving into next week. They need to come out of the jump firing. So I think that there's going to be some good tests next week. I think we should get a good metric on this team and see what they're about. I think this game was good from like a chemistry standpoint. This is like one of those wins where it's like, the team really vibes and like you can tell. I mean, you can see the joy on their faces, right? That Jalen Washington dunk, you got, I think it was Ellie Cadeau jumping up, almost the same level as him, almost hitting him in the air.
Great photo by UNC.
But like, I think that is like, those are the key takeaways for this. That this is the time of the year where you start to build that chemistry. The team feels each other out, that type of thing. So hopefully they can build on it. I'm excited to see them. I think this team is resilient. I think if I had to describe in one word, I'd use that word. They are tough. So.
We'll see. I don't know how much you can tell the resilience right now, but we'll see. I do think it's good to put away a team like kind of like that team chemistry, like the joy of scoring 100 points and being able to play a lot of players and get some time without the pressure, and then putting a team away. Those teams with Tyler Hansbrough would just dominate ACC teams, and they'd be done in the first half, and you can really try some things in the second. All right, Hawaii, then Dayton, and then we'll see what happens from there. The next home game after Maui is December 4th, is a Wednesday against Bama.
Yep.
That's gonna be an exciting game. Tickets are like lower level tickets are like $200, I think. I'll be there. So I'm excited for that one. It's kind of a weird schedule, no? It's like 1 week before game between the last two games, and then another week, and then 4 games in like 6 days, and then another couple of days off. So
decent salmon. Yep.
That's right. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Appreciate your time, Mike. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, like, follow, engage, and we'll talk to you after, probably on, I guess we'll do something on Tuesday or Wednesday, recapping the games and maybe talking a little football, depending on what happens at Boston College. Appreciate y'all.